Tonight on The Goat Show.
I lived downtown and I was a snob.
If you can't take it, you can't have it, okay?
We unite in the entire continent, Lucas.
I do think we will see a crypto renaissance under Trump.
Most of the time, they wouldn't even stop you.
Our tagline is, we're making fetch happen.
So you grew up in a cult like Children of the Corn.
Chill out, bro. Let's smoke.
Hand me the money, honey.
Welcome to The Goat Show, the show where we celebrate and debate all things great. I am joined by my co-hosts, Fresh and Deezy. Gentlemen, good to see you today. We have a very special guest that we're going to get to momentarily, someone that we have known for many moons now from our time before this show in the Twitter space, the X space. So we'll get to him in a second. His name is Lucas Johnson from the FoMO Show. But before we do, Fresh, what do the people got to do?
You got to like, you got to comment, you got to hit the bell, you got to subscribe. I think you got to go to the library today.
You definitely got to go to the library. I know that we like to use these internets and these AIs and all that, but occasionally you need to be in the room with a bunch of books like our guest today. His name is Lucas Johnson. He is from the FoMO Show. We'll put their show in the show notes. You should definitely check it out. They talk about a lot of interesting things. We will talk to him about that.
And listen, maybe this might be a little inside, but you'll never believe we got Lucas in the fucking library.
Lucas, what is going on, man? Good to see you. How are you feeling today? What's it like being surrounded by those beautiful tomes behind you?
This is my happy place. So, which I'm not a librarian, but I have access to a library. Great day. I'm here in Texas, and it snowed on us in Texas. So, woke up today and shoveled some snow, and ready for a conversation. So glad to be on the Goat Show. I love you guys, and I enjoy what you guys do. So, I've thought about my secret power. So I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right, well, let's get into it then. You know what we do here. What is, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, we're starting with this. Oh my God. Yeah, well, I actually thought about this. So, and I don't know what your guests say, but if I had a superpower, I'd want to talk to the dead, which is, in a way, it's like being in a library. I talk with the dead when I read a book.
Lucas the Necromancer. I never would have imagined.
Yeah, there's a series about me. Some dude from England wrote it.
But let me get a little specific with you. Do you mean that would they just be voices in your head? Would it be an actual like zombie that, of like a person that you could talk to across the table? Like how exactly would it work?
I mean, they would definitely talk back to me and not be voices in my head. So many people, when they talk to ghosts or rely on the voice of absent authority, whether it be ancestor or some person that they've conjured up, they're appealing to authority. I would want somebody that disagrees with me, that tells me how things really were.
Would they appear to you like an ethereal image?
I would love that. I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm not afraid of ghosts. And I know many people, maybe they don't think about it at all, but I've definitely run into a lot of people who want to be spooked out by ghosts, by unexplainable things. I don't necessarily think the world is out there to hurt us. And I don't think that people who've already gone before are don't have our interest in mind. So I'm always, I try to talk to ghosts. I walk into an empty room of an old building and I say, what happened here? Talk to me, walls. But I don't necessarily get things back like I'd like to. There's more subtle things. But if I had a true superpower, it would be like, to walk into a house and say, who lived here in 1870? And then if they, maybe I don't want to party.
And they would come out and talk to you.
Yeah, they'd come out and talk to me and they'd be like, wash the dishes, Lucas. And I would wash the dishes.
So there was this show on BuzzFeed a couple years ago, and one of the hosts, that was his thing to walk in the house and he'd be like, What's up, ghosts? It's your boy.
I thought you were going to say it was his thing to walk into the house and do the dishes, and I was like, "That's a good show. That's a really good show."
I don't mind if a ghost talks shit to me, but a ghost can't be like doing stuff behind my back. You know what I'm saying? Like if I got my girl over or something, that ghost can't be talking to her. You know what I'm saying? You can't be sneaking off with her and I come in, I'm cucked by a ghost. You know what I'm saying?
What about ghosts watch you when you're sitting on the couch watching a movie with your girlfriend?
That one Mexican dude that like has the spooky ghosts that he's got the doll, the Annabelle doll. There's like ghosts that are like fucking with him in his house, and he just like sits there and talks shit to the ghosts. He's just like sitting there. I'm gonna clap those cheeks, ghosts. I'm gonna find the show, but it's literally the most hilarious thing. But he legit has fun, like paranormal phenomenon on film. Chairs fucking falling over, doors slamming, stuff like that. And he's like, "Nah, don't run away." You know, he's like talking shit to the ghosts as all this crazy shit's happening to him. It's pretty funny. That's how Lucas would be. He'd be like, "No, come back, get over here,
I definitely, I'd be like, "Why are you mad? What's the matter?"
chill out, bro. Let's smoke."
Okay. So necromancy powers sounds good. Um, I can roll with that. Well, from superpowers to superhero origin stories, Lucas, tell us a little bit about sort of life growing up, where you're from, that type of thing, and I know that you travel a lot, so maybe tell us about your kind of your life journey a little bit.
Let me see. I'm in my 40s. I grew up on a farm, a wheat farm in the panhandle of Texas, and it was in a Norwegian farming community. So I grew up amongst like 13 other kids my age, and we all lived in farmhouses that were like 2 miles apart, and we all went to a Lutheran church that was smack dab in the middle of all of our farms. And we lived out in the middle of nowhere. So, and I have a 9 month older brother. He wouldn't appreciate me saying had, and I have a twin sister, and a younger sister. So there were,
So you grew up in a cult like Children of the Corn.
yeah, honestly, like why I watched Children of the Corn whenever I was in high school, and I was like, except for the creepy part, like I don't know. Yeah,
It's like, ooh, a family film.
yeah, it was like family film. I was like, why are people scared? Um, so, but it was a fun way to grow up. Like, I hated it sometimes when I was growing up, but as I got older, I went to college in South Texas, and then I lived in Austin for a number of years, and I began to appreciate more as I got older, like uh, obscure sort of singular, maybe not singular, but rare way to be brought up, with multiple parents, so to speak, because my two best friends who I'm still best friends with to this day, we were all born within 6 months of each other. And when I'd get off the bus coming home from school, I might stop in one of their houses, and expect their mother to take me home and to tell my mother, yada yada yada. So, the real communal childhood. Went to college, high school, blah blah. I don't talk about that unless you guys want to know about it. But
Well, what'd you take in college?
what did I take in college? I originally went to college and I wanted to be a lawyer. Hate me more. Um, and I studied political science. So, but after 2 years of that, or maybe after 3 semesters of that, I decided that I did not want to continue with political science. And then I switched over. I decided I wanted to go into some sort of international arbitrage, and probably for oil companies. And I sort of had an idea that I'd move to South America. So I switched to Spanish um, and international studies and other things. So I took a lot of English and literature too, because I always took classes that I enjoyed. So
Do you still speak Spanish? Are you fluent?
I wouldn't say some people say fluent. Fluent speakers might question fluent, but I speak Spanish very well. I've lived in South America and Central America for extended periods of time.
Oh, so tell us about that. So you, when was what countries and for how long and when?
So uh, in 2006, on in 2006, I went to Argentina. Um, and I went to Buenos Aires, and it was in the wake of the collapse of the Argentinian peso. So, and again, I was interested in sort of international finance. Hear my dog coming to say hi. Um, he's checking me on all this. And so I went to Argentina then, and I didn't speak great Spanish, but I learned a lot there. I learned that they speak Castellano, which is sort of like an Italian Spanish. But I went from like learning Spanish in a book and studying it in school for several years to being able to talk to several people at a cocktail party, which maybe is a level of fluency. And as you drink, it gets better. So, and drink more mate and other things, it gets better. Chandon, champagne. Um, so Argentina, I was there for almost 3 months, and I came back, which is also part of my like discovery of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and why, because when I was in Argentina, literally, um, prices were kept on chalkboards, and you would go to the grocery store, and like everything was kept under lock and key, like in Los Angeles these days, so I hear. And you would have this sort of trilateral system of somebody would walk you around to all of the items. You would point to the things that you want. They would take them to the front. There would be somebody that's checking them. That's the cajero, or the cashier. And you would pay for it there. And there were these very intricate systems because things were very valuable and people didn't trust money, and you kept prices on chalkboards because somebody would run to the only functioning government institution, which was the subway, the SUTA, and they would check the price of a subway ticket and a couple of different routes a day, and then they would base their prices off of that for everything. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, welcome to America.
So you were in Argentina and some other places in South America after that, or
Yeah, after that, I would. So I've worked IRL remotely since 2003, and after working remotely for a couple of years, I decided, why not travel? And I hear the internet is around the world, and there was Craigslist. I'd literally get on Craigslist, and I would rent a place. I would sublet my place in Austin, and it would pay for my flight to wherever I would go. I lived in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, visited Panama. So most of the time, I would go to Costa Rica in the years after that. And I always wanted to go back to Argentina, but it's a long trip. It's a long flight.
I have a question about just in terms, because I know you also traveled around the United States as well, and I'm just curious, was traveling just a passion for you, or do you feel like it's something that you did because you wanted to learn about something related into the world?
When I was growing up, my mother, who's a librarian, maybe I need a couch.
Wait, that is you're in her library? Is that what you're saying?
I'm in my mom's library. Yeah, I said, Mom, I got to do a show. They call me Lucas in the library. Give me the key, and she gave me the key. But my mom, when I grew up on a farm, and money was tight in the '80s, and it was more of a thing to travel. And it was also a long ways. Like I live in the middle of nowhere, where it's a 6-hour drive to a town with an airport, and then maybe some 9-hour flight. So that there's a lot of barriers. And so when I was growing up, we had an exchange student most years of my life, and that was something like 13, I believe, exchange students that actually lived with us, and they also sort of enjoyed living on a farm. Many people wanted to come to America and have some sort of bucolic heartland experience, so we could provide that. And but it also gave me people that I could go and visit. And I started with visiting some of my former like host brothers and sisters, and that took the I think I forget sometimes that some people have a fear of traveling. I mean, when I went to Argentina, I went with a pair of shorts and a toothbrush. And people were like, "Where's your bag?" And I was like, "I hear that they have stores in Argentina." So, and when I would go to Costa Rica, it would be the same thing. Like like I might bring a duffel bag wadded up in a backpack, but the duffel bag was so that I could haul back coffee and illegal limon mincinas and salsa lozano and other things like that. Um, and sometimes people get a hold of me and be like, "Could you bring a coffee maker?" And so I would bring some special coffee maker. But no, I travel really light, and it came from it came like I guess my desire for travel came with living and growing up with interesting people from Hong Kong, Japan, Russia, Germany, Brazil, like sort of everywhere. It's I recommend it to anyone.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I want to get to. I don't know. I haven't wanted to travel for a while, and then all of a sudden, last year or two, I've been just like wanting to go places and get out of the country and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Just I guess maybe it's just I'm getting a little stir crazy being in the U.S.
You know, you said I have traveled all over the United States too. There was at some point because now I hardly travel at all. It's like I enjoy traveling, but also there it made traveling a lot made me look at life differently and also sort of re-embrace my farm roots and family, and want to and made maybe like urban experiences and crowds and movies and theaters and bars and all that, like you get enough of them after a while. But I at some point I decided to stop flying and to start driving. And even like when I got tired, there was a time at which I got tired of living in Austin, and I thought I was going to pick up and move to San Diego or San Francisco. And instead, I gave my car to a friend who needed a car, and I said, "Here, keep this for 6 months. I'm so tired of this town." And so I started walking around instead, and also riding my bike. And there was well, there I started riding my bike for a while, and then I got tired again, and my bike got stolen, and I was like, "Oh, it's a sign." So I walked around instead, and it was interesting that like all of those changes of the medium of transportation changed how I lived and changed my experience and the people that I would run into.
By walk, do you mean like you would walk from town to town, like a wanderer?
Well, no, no. I was in Austin, and I was like a I lived downtown, and I was a snob, and there were boundaries. Like I would not go south of Old Torth, or like I had rules that I would go north of the river like only 2 or 3 times a month. Like God forbid, I don't want to get caught downtown. Like after a while, you're like, oh, I'm not a barfly anymore. I'm a coffee shop snob, and I can only be seen at certain cafes. So. Um, so yeah, and it also like made me choose like I started going to different bars because they were local bars, and I lived in some like fun neighborhoods in South Austin, and it was nice to begin to get to know people and run into the same people who I might see walking down the neighborhood, run into them. I also started climbing at that point, and I lived near the climbing areas in South Austin. So I was just like walking to the walls, and I'd spend most of my day, like I would work, and then I would end up climbing a lot in the afternoons in something called the Greenbelt on Barton Creek.
Hmm, very cool. I need to spend more. Austin's the last, I think, city in the United States that I would like to go and spend an extended period of time. I've always wanted to see what that city's like, and I don't know. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe next year or two I'll go to Austin and spend some time there.
Come to Phoenix while you're at it.
Hey, I'll do Phoenix too. I want to check out Phoenix as well. Those are the last two. All right, I want no more cities in America. All right, people. I don't care how cool your city is. I don't. Well, I might go to Coeur d'Alene in Idaho.
Meet Deezy and Flagstaff. What do you think of Flagstaff, Deezy?
Flag is cool. During school sessions, it's overly packed because you got all the college kids and everything, and it's not that big of a town. So, and the transportation as far as like to get around, there's only a couple roads, so it gets a little hectic when school's in session up there because it is a college town. Um, but it's a really cool place. I mean, if we're gonna travel somewhere, I would say let's go to Sedona.
Yeah, forget about the schools. You don't want to go to Walnut Canyon?
The Walnut Canyon is that by Sedona? Is that one of the Sedona?
I think so, yeah.
That's Flagstaff, right?
It might be between them, like Oak Canyon. Yeah, there's a lot. Flagstaff sits up on the rim. Sedona's down in the valley off the Mogollon Rim. But I really like Flagstaff. I nearly wound up in Flagstaff. Phoenix was too hot. Sorry, Deezy.
I want to go back to something you mentioned, Lucas, crypto. So, for anybody who doesn't know, Lucas is one of the hosts of a show called the FoMO Show. We know Lucas from basically crypto Twitter. When NFT started popping off, we were all up in Twitter/X, hopping in spaces. Lucas was there as well, and I know that you know a lot about crypto and that type of thing. So maybe you could kind of describe your crypto journey. How did you first discover it, and where has it led you?
When I was in Argentina in late 2006, was the first time that I ever saw people who were using crypto. And I don't know that it would seem secure, but it certainly was more secure than the state money that was there. And people were looking for options.
Wait, this is 2006.
2006.
They were already using alternate currencies that were kind of crypto.
I mean, even like I graduated high school in 1999, and I was the guy that you went to get a CD burned. And I had Napster and I had a CD burner, when nobody else did. So and I also, my best friend worked for a bank whenever I was in high school, and you know the crypto went through the notion of using the internet in some fashion to get around the banking system was something that was apparent. There was a time when ATMs were new and people were like, "Oh, you can use the phone line to transmit cash." And then people were like, "Oh, and you could have there's this like public thing called the internet, so why couldn't we have um a more public or decentralized version?" Some of these buzzwords or whatnot. So it was well, I don't even know how much the concept is grasped today as people talk about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Haha. But it was something that I had tossed around and thought about for a while. And I also grew up again in a house like full of different currencies from around the world, francs, and before the euro ever existed. And everyone would always bring money, and I always thought, well, how cool is it that you could go to some place in the world and like put your money into to Deutschmarks and hold on to it a while and then swap it back into dollars and have more dollars than you had before. Oh my god. um so I was very interested in that from high school. And then in Argentina, I discovered people who were using the internet for private banking of a sort. And then when I was living in Austin, I was back and forth in San Francisco. And I had some friends who were also into peer-to-peer cash systems. And I mean, I heard about Bitcoin on March the 3rd or 4th of 2009, so before the white paper dropped. And that also, like, to give you that sort of perspective, I was like, well, why is this one any different? And what's so great about Bitcoin? So don't anybody go like ransacking my house or anything, because rather than um, I'm a pretty modest person, but that's also part of the decision to move out to the West and go climbing for years, because I took the Bitcoin time preference rather than the hodl and stare at a chart path. And whenever I began to understand that Bitcoin had solved some issues, and especially due to the anonymity of Satoshi, was not going to be shut down anytime soon, I thought that was going to have impacts on the dollar system and how America worked. And so I picked up and I looked around Austin at some point too, because this is in the wake of the 2008 2009 global financial crisis, and most of the United States um, had large amounts of foreclosures and a reset of what was called a housing bubble at the time. And I thought to myself at that time, Austin wasn't seeing it. And I said, there are many undervalued houses and places in America, because I can go to Nicaragua, um, and I can go to Panama, and I can live like a king on $3 a day. But I can also turn around and I can go to rural towns in America, and I can live on $7 a day. Whereas in Austin, I have to live on $20 a day. And if I go to San Francisco, I need $30. And if I go to New York, I need $50. And I thought Bitcoin is going to have, and whatever else happens because of it is going to have a a leveling impact on that. And I thought, we also have the internet. We work from home. At some point, people are going to flee the cities, and they're going to look for mid-sized towns like Flagstaff, like Bend, Oregon, um, and also the West. Like I liked to climb, and I liked hiking, and doing active things. And I thought there will be a time too, whenever we're over superhero movies and period pieces by God knows who, and we get tired of the cinema and we want to immerse ourselves in the outside world.
So being aware of cryptocurrencies and stuff like that, because I bring that up because that's sort of how we met in spaces on Twitter related to NFTs and crypto and that type of thing. Um, how did I know that you're now doing the FOMO show, and part of what started that was I think, I mean, you tell me, but it started out as sort of kind of, focusing on some crypto things, but I think it's kind of expanding out to a lot of different topics. Can you tell us about the FOMO show and the origin of it, and sort of where, what the show's about and what you talk about on it?
Sure. Um, one was the innovation of Twitter and Spaces, and being able to press a button, because I've always thought, oh, it'd be fun to do a radio show. It'd be fun to talk about interesting things. Um, but I also had, like I had gone on to a life of reading a lot of books. Um, and I was very much away from social media of any kind, Facebook or anything. And and I wasn't, like I wanted to build and be part of small communities. Um, I also served on a town board and a water board of my small town, and we had issues with people being unable to pay their utilities bills. Um, and in a discussion with some members of our town board and our chamber of commerce one day, I said there's something called crypto that can solve some of these problems. And, but nobody looks at it the right way, because everybody looks at it as finding some sort of asset to hold on to and to jump out of the fiat system. But what we should be doing is changing our real lives. And some of them looked at me, or two of them, they looked at me, and all of them understood it. Like in 2010, I would talk about Bitcoin, and people would look at me like I was talking about, yeah, name any conspiracy I'll talk about.
I mean, we all have our stories. I mean, I remember someone telling me about it and offering to buy it for me, I think it was like $30 a token, and I told him, like, why would I want to buy video game money? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, and now I'm kicking myself in the face every day with the steel toe boot. What was I thinking? Like, as a person who values freedom and call himself a libertarian, how did I not see that? This is the biggest opportunity in the universe, but it is what it is, I guess.
Well, it obviously changed something in your life, because I met you in crypto Twitter. And again, I spoke of a time preference. I think in some ways, having like a finite asset that we think about in terms of money, as opposed to something magical that comes from a group of people, a government or whoever else, it changes our decisions. And that's the best impact that I think it has. But anyway, in the wake of that discussion, when they all understood and they were like, why doesn't this exist? And I knew, because I had been on Twitter for news, especially in the New Mexico fires of 2006. No, I'm sorry, 2021, 22. Um, and that was the best way to get news. And then I had seen Spaces on, and I was like, wow, I can like press a button and go argue with laser-eyed Bitcoiners. Um, and so I started to do that. And actually, like Deezy, you're the first of the people that I met because somehow I stumbled into coffee and crypto, and I argued um, with uh, with people in there, which was fun. And it's also a great place to exchange ideas. Like I'm interested in history and politics, and I also think crypto at its root is a political discussion. It's about changing some of the things that have happened politically over a very long arc of time, and so I wanted to try to like to go and have that conversation and to talk about the politics end of it. So that ends up um, like that's not us also in say Twitter Spaces is not the conversation that most people want to have.
I mean, it depends. It depends. I mean, we all. I think if you're into crypto, you are aware that there are problems in the political system and the economic system, and a lot of people are there because of that reason. I mean, maybe not lately. Maybe it's just reaching its point where everybody's. It's just another asset class, and everybody wants exposure. But at least for the last few years, since I mean, my first journey into it really was in 2016, 2017. And it was major, and that was a lot of the reason why. So, I think it makes sense. But um, yeah. So, I mean, bring it to the FOMO show, though. I mean, so you were in Spaces, you were talking about these different topics, and I kind of wanted to expand on that because you're saying that there's crypto, but then there's all these other things that you're interested in. I know on the FOMO show, you kind of talk about the wider, broader view, right? Like it's not just about crypto, but it's also geopolitics and that type of thing.
Yeah, our tagline. I joke with Grant. Our tagline is "We're making fetch happen," which is a great joke on all the millennials and Z's who don't know what that reference is to, and I'm not going to tell you here, and you're not allowed to either. They have to look it up. But when we try to decide what to talk about or whether an episode was successful, it's like, did we predict the future correctly? Because there's sort of like metrics, and a lot of people in crypto like know they're right, and a lot of people who talk about conspiracy theories know they're right. But you have these other metrics, whether it be science or whether it be like so many people say so, like like a lot of people don't see it that way, and I'm like, well, I don't care if a lot of people don't see it that way. I want to predict the future, and I want to find out that I was like close to right, or that I was thinking about it in some sort of thread that didn't make me anxious or angry, but gave me like an ability to make decisions that like benefit from turns in the future. So that's what we try to do at FOMO.
So yeah, I mean, I listened to for you know your best guest that you've ever had on the show was on there. I think the day before yesterday. None other than Fresh. What was your experience like, Fresh? What? How did you feel about being on the FOMO show, and what did you guys discuss?
Okay, so two things. First of all, it's going to sound a little narcissistic, but everything I do is amazing. I enjoy everything that I do. But second of all, every time I hang out with Lucas, it's great. So um, I really enjoyed the conversation. I think that they run a good show. And yeah, it was fun.
You talked about. I mean, we could maybe get into some of the things that are happening in the culture right now. You talked about Canada becoming the 51st state. Lucas, we had a discussion. That episode's going to come out. If it's not out already by the time this is up, it will be out. About Canada becoming the 51st state, the new American imperialism. And I listened to your conversation, and these Canadians, Lucas, man, way uppity, don't want to give up their sovereignty, and us globalists have just got to fucking get in there.
If you can't take it, you can't have it. Okay.
Listen, North American Union's on its way. All right. We unite in the entire continent, Lucas.
To that I say sovereignty is something that you give your neighbor. It's not something you take for yourself. But conversely, people want to move around. And I think the carrot that is undeniable. One, we already have trade agreements with our neighbors, and it's important. It's more important for us to have good relationships and good trade with our geopolitical neighbors, more so than other countries around the world. So part of what I see with Trump's pivot towards Canada and Greenland and Panama is a pivot. What they're not talking about is a pivot away from the Middle East, and from Asia and from Russia and from Europe, like most importantly from Europe. And you can also see that in the move towards Greenland. You know, that negatively impacts Denmark. And last time I checked, the king of Denmark was related to the king of every other European country uh, on the continent. Maybe not every other, but they're that's a type group over there. They're all related, and they see the world very similarly. And we are neighbors with Canadians. We share many similar things in our history. Starting from being quote unquote discovered in 1492 to any number of religious struggles and notions about movement, liberty, the ability to move around like air, freedom, lower taxes. Like I think that's something Americans and even Americans. I've always told Canadians, because I've hung out with many of them when in my climbing travels, because they like to get out of the cold and come down to the south, come down to Arizona, Deezy. And I would say, well, we're all Americans, and even in Mexico, we're Americans too. Um, and we've had free trade with we've had free trade agreements, preferential trade agreements with them since the 90s, but we don't have mirrored with that the ability to move from country to country, and we used to. I mean, in on the southern border in Mexico when I was a child, I don't know that there were border checkpoints. And think before the Patriot Act, whenever we gave away habeas corpus within 100 miles of the borders and gave the federal government powers that had not been handed to them before. And that put like expectations of people a lot further away from what was going on in those local areas. And Canada has been less affected by it. My co-host on FOMO is from Minnesota, and he talks about like going back and forth across the border all the time, even to this day. But I don't know if that's true in Toronto. I don't know if that's true in Montreal.
Well, but even still going across the border, like he's got to show them his passport now, as opposed to when, like growing up, we could go with our license and they wouldn't even scan it. Like you would show your license at the window and he'd be like, "Oh, hey, Canadian guy, go through." Like, you know what I mean? See you in a couple hours when you're finished shopping in Buffalo. Like,
Most of the time, they wouldn't even stop you. They would wave you through. When I was a kid, I remember they would just wave you through.
and like especially if you're a family, like a mom and dad and kids in the back, like they're not stopping you for what? To check if you might be part of the cartel? Like, what do you know what I mean? What are they stopping a regular family for?
Yeah, and I think that will be the carrot that's like very hard for the Canadian people and the American people to turn down. Like Europe didn't turn it down; they have the Schengen Agreement. But part and part to that is also a discussion about immigration and who deserves to move into a country. And there I also find it interesting, like H-1B visa territory, um, but also like birth nationalism. And what does Nazi but mean? But a nationalist or national socialist. Those who are born here get to share in the rewards. And I think that's something else that's again part of a broader political arc of something that we're moving away from. Because in some way too, nationalism, or in French, nation is to be born. Nationalism or a nation are the people who are born here, and that's not what people's idea of like political arrangements that are most favorable to how we want to live. I don't know that if it's stronger in Europe and other places, but in North America and maybe in the Americas, we've moved a long ways from that, and we like to move around.
I mean, my personal feeling is that I think people want that, but there has to be some understanding between the countries that, in terms of safety, security, that's really the main issue, I think, is 9/11 killed all that stuff, whether it should have or not. And so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think definitely with Canada, something can be worked out. Mexico might be a different story, but
I do want to say that I saw, as of this recording, the leader of Greenland said he'd be willing to sit down with Trump and negotiate the future status of the country. So interesting words there.
Well, when we were recording the last episode, like Don Jr. had landed in Greenland to discuss it, right? Like again, I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't be landing there to have a conversation if they weren't entertaining it at least. And I like I said then, I really think that it's like the art of war shit. He's like puffing his chest out, and then he's gonna bring a real deal to the table. He's gonna be like, okay, so now that you guys are scared that we're coming to conquer everything, why don't we just do the North American Union? You guys all stay sovereign, and we just have like a communal agreement on what immigration looks like for the continent so that we can control everything, and like what exports look like and what like all that shit looks like for the continent. Just having like a communal meeting about this shit and agreeing on it. And again, I think that once everybody's scared that he's going to start like conquering countries, I think they're going to be a lot more likely to listen to him when he's bringing a reasonable idea.
But like to go back also with Trump, think about what he said, especially in the days leading up to the election. Maybe the most important interview is to listen to whenever he was in, I think Tucson actually, or it might have been Phoenix. DZ, tell me you were there. Whenever he sat on a stage with Tucker Carlson, and the media takeaway from it was remarks that he said like 9 guns pointing at Liz Cheney. But that was part of a deeper discussion in which he was saying we cannot have wars.
Yeah, like if you want to go to war, you go fight them. Let's see how you do with the guns pointing at you. Not so much so I want to kill Liz Cheney.
No, he was saying the people who want to operate on this notion of coercion and wars and using our military to force our will on other peoples should be the ones who are fighting that and who are facing that danger. And he said Kim Jong Un or the leaders in Europe or Xi Jinping, whoever it was, he said I had good relationships with them. And he said I always remembered that they love their country and that I love my country. And so that's sort of what I remember whenever I see him positioning and trying to change this narrative, because he's very wary of the power of what people say and the way things are trotted out. He understands how that was used against him and is used against politicians. Some of them might mean well and then back into it, like grabbing their hands, like thinking of you Canadians. But too nice, and he's not going to be nice. He's going at it with calculated, like I need to change the conversation. I don't need, and I can't talk about leaving Europe. But what is he saying whenever he says I'm going to take Germany or I'm going to take Greenland? He's saying NATO is dead.
Well, Greenland's North America, right?
I mean, Greenland is North America, and people talk about colonialism and empire, but if we are establishing trade relations and the ability to move about in regional areas, that seems like backing away from globalism and from the colonial of a couple of European countries controlling the rest of the world.
As long as you don't go into other places, right? Like, this is kind of the NATO problem, right? It's like NATO stops here and then NATO continues to grow. Like, if we have the North American Union and then we don't start bringing countries into the fold, then I don't think that it's globalism at all. Again, I think this is all of our countries creating a union to serve the citizen.
Well, and I'm also wary of narratives of defense, because narratives of defense are actually narratives of coercion and war. Our defense department was originally called our war department, and it's an important thing to have people who are wary and suspicious and strong, and have institutions that like see the world in such a way, but they should follow our political institutions. If we believe in democracy and we believe in government and we believe in abilities to choose, then we should stand by our word and stand by trade. Like free trade is about many of those things. Giving people having choices, and the narrative in the world of NATO and defense does not set us up for that. It deprives it, we have deprived other people of choice, and that's why everyone wants to come to America. And I think it's a great rug pull on them, because I mean I love America, and I love many things. Like again, I've traveled in other countries and I've seen how people are not even aware of, say, of individual choices, and I'm very wary of that. But at the same time, um, I don't know. I look at Friends on television. I look at some of these things that we've distributed throughout the world, and I think they give a false impression of what life is really like.
What do you think of Trump and crypto? What's your take on that? It seems like he's. I mean, the whole Bitcoin reserve thing. We had Aaron Day as an interview on the show, and he is like, "Fuck Bitcoin." Basically, it's a them talking about it being digital gold is the biggest scam or whatever. Now that's his opinion on that, and he's recommending other types of cryptos that are more anonymous or whatever. But I'm just kind of curious what you think about Trump and what he said about crypto, and whether we're going to see sort of a crypto renaissance coming under his presidency.
I do think we will see a crypto renaissance under Trump. I think that he will probably be looking at it as a something for people to get excited about. It's for him it's like a it's like a table decoration at a party, or I don't know what. It's something for people to get excited about, and to excite them and to cause innovation. Um, he may court Bitcoin as a strategic reserve.
Do you think he'll follow through with a Bitcoin reserve or in a crypto basket reserve for other currencies?
He may, but I don't know. I don't think that's in our best interest. It's in the best interest of people who are holding Bitcoin, so they love to tell you that.
Why do you think it's not in our best interest to have that?
Well, supposedly the United States has a very large amount of gold that we hold on to, that we own, and we also hold on to gold that is owned by the rest of the world. And people, in the crypto world talk about gold versus Bitcoin, or individual, getting away from banks, getting away from middlemen. Gold's really hard to do that because um, you can verify a contract address on Ethereum or Solana or some blockchain, but you have to like have acids and things to check whether gold has been debased, and you have to have scales, and that doesn't make it very easy for hauling around, but it does make it good for large groups, corporations, and countries to hold on to, and to use as a measure of trust, or what is owed against each other. And in the United States holding more gold than many other countries in the world, like El Salvador having a Bitcoin reserves, great idea, because they don't have a lot of gold. And so, because people have trust in Bitcoin, because institutions have trust in Bitcoin, they can leverage that against the price of gold. And they can buy Bitcoin whenever that price is low, and then turn and buy gold when that price is low. But if the United States has the amount of gold that it says it does, then we shouldn't be worried about that. And we should instead be focusing on who's buying the debt behind the United States dollars.
There's also they're saying now that all the what do you call it, Bitcoin that they seized from Silk Road. I think it's like $6 billion or something. They're trying to sell that off. So it's a little strange to me that you would be like, "Hey, we're going to make a Bitcoin reserve, but all this Bitcoin we have from Silk Road, we're about to just dump it on the market."
Well, I think that's for legal reasons, right? Because I think like it would be weird to put proceeds of crime into the reserve. So I think they're selling it. It's kind of the same thing as the Roger Ver thing, where like, I mean, it's like selling everything, bro. You got to sell it all.
Yeah, and because I think you get into, does any libertarian think that civil asset forfeiture is fair? Um, and so yeah, I mean, I was not surprised to see the Justice Department and the marshals lining up to try to sell off that Bitcoin, and also for that decision maybe to be coming down now to the wire, as we go into the Trump administration. So, um, because the Democrats, I mean, there are people who genuinely see crypto as a scam, and who don't, who don't see the dollar as a scam. What do you have faith in, and what do we have choices for? So, um, I don't, when I look at Trump's talking about buying Greenland, I think about Alaska. You know, it was Lincoln's secretary. I don't I actually I think it was the Secretary of the Interior, Seward, um, who bought Alaska. And the reason that he bought Alaska is because he wanted to drive the United States into debt. It was leading into the Civil War, and he wanted to raise tariffs on American goods so that it would drive down the cotton trade between the southern United States and Britain. And he thought that if we went into debt and we had to tax the cotton trade more, it would depress the production of cotton in the South, and that would lead to solving the problem of slavery in the United States. But instead, we got the income tax. And the income tax is part of the problem, the exacerbated problem of velocities of money flying around more quickly in urban areas and rural America falling behind. And people talk about, oh, there's four parties. Well, there's money behaves differently in urban areas and rural areas. And whenever the government can make money on financial sector, the financial sector, fire insurance, and real estate, we can raise the price of our houses, and that raises the price of taxes, and some people benefit from that. But the people who are tied to the production of things and industry, and at some level, we, in a world of reality, we all are. Some of us may be on farms, but some of us also building cars or building furniture, waiting for trees to grow. I don't know what, but you can't speed that up. And if you look at our obsession with technology and speeding up food production and speeding up the amount of time it takes to build a house, like, you can look at it and it goes all like adoption of funding the federal government on an income tax had massive impacts.
Do you think that? I mean, how do you feel about Trump's tariffs? And I know you guys talked about it when Freshers was on the FoMO show. How do you feel about the tariffs? Do you feel like we can get back to a system where we only use tariffs and we don't have an income tax like we used to, or is that sort of a pipe dream in your opinion?
No, I think we can. I think that an income tax is a terrible idea. I think the income tax is one of the worst ideas that's ever been.
Idea, yeah, more than idea.
Taxation is theft.
Well, it's also, to own is the past tense of owed. You made a contract with somebody to buy a house from them. You're paying them in eggs and whatever barter. Who knows what? You're digging a hole in the ground and dragging silver and titanium out. I don't know, but once you pay it off, you own it. Doesn't necessarily mean you control it. And what do you own whenever you're paying income tax? A job. You know, when in the wake of 2008, Neil Kashkari, who was the president of, I think, the Minneapolis or St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank, said we're going to keep interest rates low so that money passes around more, because the only asset most Americans have is a job. And if we're running the country off this notion of, oh, the only thing that we can give to people is a job, the American dream isn't to have a job, to work 80 hours a week. The American dream is to have a house and to have a yard and to have neighbors and to play baseball.
A white picket fence.
Yeah, all of those things. No offense to baseball.
An army of AI robots doing everything while I watch Netflix.
Those conversations about technology and about AI is merely avoiding that question. Are we going to fund the government? Are we going to distribute the resources to appropriate the property of these United States in a way that people have access to, showing that they belong in some way other than just a job?
I personally am of two minds. I don't. I mean, you know me, man. I'm a narco objectivist libertarian. I don't think the government ever does anything that is actually to the benefit of the people. And usually I find that it's the technologists and entrepreneurs that actually save everybody's asses by making things more efficient and more productive. which hopefully that's what happens over the next 4 or 5 years with all this AI and robotics and stuff like that. So it's one of those things for me. I'm, I just feel like end taxes and just let entrepreneurs, do what they need to do. There's going to be situations where maybe they don't always do the best thing, but overall, the best actors usually win, and the ones that provide the most value usually win, as long as they're not interfered with. I don't know how you feel about that. I just feel like it's like the government already sucks. I mean, look at this California wildfires thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was watching the All In podcast yesterday night, and I forgot. Like in 2018, they had these massive fires where the Getty Museum was, like, and you have video of people driving through that valley. And I remember that. And I remember when I lived in LA, there were wildfires all the time. And they basically, from what I can tell, haven't really done anything, you know? And Trump told them back then what to do and whatever. So,
Well, it's worse than not done anything, bro. They've done reverse things, like cut budgets, and you know what I mean? So they've done the opposite of do things.
yeah, and California is a one-party state, and they tax the shit out of everybody, and especially all the rich people there, right? Like, I mean, so it's one of those things where I just go, why are we giving bad actors and irresponsible idiots and people who do not have a direct relationship or face any consequences for for lackluster performance? You know what I'm saying? Why are we going to give them more control to distribute more capital? It's like, fuck them. I want them out. I want all the capital to come back to us, and we'll figure this shit out ourselves. The other thing is that we're already doing it. Like, I'm looking on, the North Carolina thing's another example. I'm looking on, my Instagram today, and it's like people are self-organizing to figure out the fire problem and to house people and and offering their own homes and all kinds of stuff.
Renting out whole floors on hotels, like renting out whole floors and being like, "Hey, we have a floor. Hit us up if you're in trouble. You can come stay with us." Like, and we even have friends that are going out into, like, boots on the ground, like, "Hey, you guys need anything? Like, how can we help you guys?" You know what I mean? They're 1, 2 communities over, like, maybe even evacuated at this point. You know what I mean? Like, but at the time when it first happened, they're boots on the ground helping people out.
Yeah, same thing in Nashville. I mean, I have friends who were in Nashville who were doing so. I'm not, and I don't want you to feel like I'm going after you at all, Luke. I'm just saying, like, I just don't feel like giving the government any more money to redistribute or figure out who to hand it to is, for me personally, I think it's the wrong way to go. I feel like it's like, get the money out of their hands, stop fucking with this middleman, let the people keep their money, let them decide where they want to put it, and they will put it to. I don't believe this notion that if you give people their money back, they're just gonna use it for ill will constantly. I feel like you're going to use it for what you need to use it for and what you want to do to build your life.
There's this bill that was introduced by Earl Carter from Georgia, and it's HR 25 to promote freedom, fairness, and economic opportunity by repealing income tax and other taxes, abolishing IRS, and enacting a national sales tax to be administered primarily by the states.
I'd like to repeal the income tax, but not the sales tax. Because I mean, again, that's a reliance on having to move something around, and if you can sell more things, then it allows you to unpeg away from the agricultural sector. So I worry about that. And who's the winner there? Credit card companies. ZiLLY, to your preference over private enterprise versus the government, I say not all companies are the same. Not all corporations are the same. And not all governments are the same. And I think there are two very important things that we need to start thinking about in terms of government. What's the size of the government? Who has the inputs in that? And what are their taxes? Because we never think about that. And we've allowed the state and local governments, the municipal or county governments, to be outpriced by running to catch up with these magically made dollars. That and so I agree with you 100% on, but whenever when I see that the houses in the Palisades of California are worth $3.5 million, I say, really, was that the cost of the wood that went into them and the price of labor? No, that's an artificial cost that goes into this lie of raising taxes and people who stand next to the government with a handout. That, but but that but that is how the smaller governments in the United States have become beholden to the federal government. Because they can lie about the amount of money that's created or that's in the system, and then turn around and reprice things, whether it be by the employees of the government, from the military to the post office, or the representatives, or whomever it may be, the highway crew, et cetera, et cetera. But they turn around and they reprice everything in a house. In New Mexico, you can't find, no municipality can afford to hire a police officer. How come? Because there's border patrol on the southern side of the state. Border patrol works for the federal government. They get paid more, and behind that is the state police for the state highways. And a town can train somebody to be a municipal police officer, and once they get all that training, they're going to go work for the state, and then they're going to work for border patrol, because they get paid more and they get paid more, and yet they have to, and then they go back and live in the community. So we need to be very sensitive about that, and we need to get off this system where also municipalities can't afford their water lines. They can't afford to prepare to pay the firefighters, or to, more importantly than paying firefighters, they should have been paying, grounds crews and people to maintain and clear the brush, and maybe there should have been some pressure that they had to think about, like, who got awarded the wood contracts, and who got awarded grazing contracts, so that there was some sort of industry that was aimed at meeting that end too. But instead, we live in a world where, we declare an emergency, there's going to be funding that comes from the government. I mean, look at Governor Newsom. What was his response? His response was, I'm going to call the president of the United States. And Joe Biden says, whatever the price, because I can make money out of nothing. We pass it around. We're going to raise the interest rate on, and raise the amount of money that exists in the system, and magically everything will be taken care of. But we don't want to live this way, and we need to have pressure on local governments to make hard decisions, and that's what we're missing right now.
Yeah, there definitely is complications that come from the system that we have, and how everything seems to be more and more centralized in the federal government. Which is another. I mean, this is part of why I'm a little bit like concerned about this Greenland, whatever, all this other shit. It's like we don't need more like land that needs to be taken care of by the federal government. Like, I mean, I like what our friend Josh, friend of the show, he posted up a picture in our text feed that we have of all the counties. It's a map of the United States, and it's all the counties, and underneath it he wrote that the sovereign states, or what is it, the United Sovereign States of America. And I've always liked that notion better. Just basically each county is its own city state, and we just form alliances, and what I think originally the founders were envisioning, which is like an EU. Like, we definitely have our own states and our own places with our own cultures, but we unite when we need to protect against outside invaders or things like that. But you know look at that, look how that went. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's a constant struggle, but everyone loves to talk about the republic. But before the Constitution, there was a union of democratic republics, and up until the Civil War, we didn't talk about the United States. We talked about the Union, and the sovereignty of those republics was implicit. But the republic speaks to that notion of the landowners were those who got to participate in governments, and that wasn't the fairest of systems. And maybe we want to try to ensure land ownership, or that kind of like proof of stake as well as proof of work in the governments. But I don't know. We've wandered away from it, and again, I think it's very important to remember that we like who sets and where do we assess taxes on property and on land. And we do, like, the county owns the land, and municipalities are a layer over that have a lot of control over especially real property. And this upsets some people who talk about sovereignty, but at some point you got to work with your neighbors, or else the other group of people are going to work and they're going to take what's yours. So we need to figure out governments that find people who want to work together and see the world similarly, and give them the tools to work together. And you think about because this is also something that's been like hoodwinked over Americans, this equation of land and property. When you have a deed, Deezy, you're probably well aware of all these ins and outs. When somebody buys a house, they're conveyed a deed. The deed describes a tract of land, and it assigns certain rights that go to that land. And we ought to think about the nuance and the distinction between that, because we can both tax land and we can tax property. But whenever we think of it as ubiquitous in one thing, you know, somebody can own 3 million acres in New Mexico and pay $20,000 of taxes on it because they're paying the taxes for their 10,000 square foot house on it.
I mean, I would say there should be no taxes on any of it. I mean, that it's like why?
As a homeowner, and like because I'm very aware and I keep up, we get our property tax statement every year. It tells you where the money goes, to like what the money's being used for and where the money gets funded to. I'm okay with our property taxes. It funds the local schools. We have nice schools right next to us, and we have a nice park right next to us. Like, it funds all of this stuff that is an amenity to us in our neighborhood. So I'm okay with certain. I understand that things aren't free, right? And it's not going to be easy to get all of our neighbors to go and do the maintenance on all of that stuff because it's our mutual interest. But having systems that take care of the things that we enjoy, I'm okay with paying a small premium for that. It's just about figuring out who gets to decide what the cost of that is and how much money is being mismanaged in the process, that I want to be aware about. If the money's going to keeping our schools nice and keeping the streets clean and actually fixing the issues within my neighborhood, then I'm okay with that, right? As long as they're not trying to tax me, you know, 10% of the value of my home every year, because then now I don't really own the home. If I'm paying $1,000 in taxes a year, $1,200 in taxes a year, they break down where that money goes, and I'm aware, then I'm okay with that. Transparency, I think, is important too. And I think that's where the government falls short on a lot of this stuff.
Just my personal opinion on that is that a market can provide those things, and for cheaper and for better, in my and to with customization. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I feel like what is going to make a government better at that than a real, and I agree with what you're saying, Lucas. Like a real free market, not a Fed controlled. That's not really a free market. Like if you have a central bank, you don't have a country with a free market. The Fed is going to determine who wins and who loses and influences that market.
Let's in part start at the word free. Free is the Norse god Freya. Freedom is the place of Freya. Freya is the mother goddess. This is where you treat people that you're related to. Like, how do you treat your mom? Do you do the dishes when you go to your house? And I say that because, like, we have this notion of free as like not participating, but you behave when you're at home, or maybe not. But I also, for having free markets, I also think it's very important that you know money and value be assessed at the most local levels, and between neighbors. And the problem that we have whenever we remove like proof of work, because part of having land and property tax is like, what's the production level there? You have 7,000 acres of grassland and you're not doing anything with it. Oh, why? Because you were an insurance salesman in a city somewhere and you moved in with a fat bag, and so you don't have to participate here. What happens to all the jobs of a town if that's the world that we live in? So this is why I like to see property and land tax, but I also like to see the money that they are taxed in being a representation of local value and local inputs and work.
I guess this would be kind of my final take on this is and this is just in general, like philosophically, I feel like there's this tendency to believe that markets are anti-community, and I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like true markets, free markets that are not interfered with, oftentimes are more humane than markets that are interfered with by government and taxes and things like that. Because yes, like I, I mean, maybe it's not a 70,000 acre property like Bill Gates has, but if it's me and it's my house and I'm next to Deezy's house and Fresh has a house over here, unless I'm a sociopath, which they do exist, but there's less of them than actual normal people with actual, human feelings. I'm going to want to live with them in peace. I'm not going to want drama with my neighbors. And we're not going to want drama with other communities. We're going to want to protect the community and make sure that if other people try to, do something to the community, that we can protect ourselves against it. So I don't know. I just feel like, you know, I, I get hesitant when I hear ideas of like, we need more, even on the local level, we need more government. It's like, let entrepreneurs, do what they're going to do and let people figure out solutions. Like, and that's the other thing. It's like the signals, right? Like, I think so much of this California wildfire thing is that like people in those communities kind of they entrust the government to like take care of this stuff, and so they keep their eye off the ball, or they're not as what I'm saying, like they're expecting someone else to come in, and then they kind of just let it go, and then they get fucked over, and then guess what? They can't rebuild on the properties that their homes are burned out of because they have all these taxes and regulations and everything. I mean, maybe they'll change that, but I'm not expecting them to rebuild. I'm expecting the government to come in and give these big corporations some kind of opportunity to build these like mega cities or whatever they keep talking about. But
I'm afraid that we're going to make a whole bunch of dollars and give it to insurance holding companies, and then insurance companies turn around and maintain the asset price there. But you mentioned community, and I talked about local governments and empowering local governments. I think part of what our metric for should be for that is who do you forgive a debt to? Because when I look at Los Angeles and other places that are having fires or having public problems, my first thought whenever I saw the fires in Los Angeles is there's a massive number of homeless people there. It's winter. They're like people are burning things to stay warm, or maybe worse, they're upset that they're not part of a property class, and they're taking out a vendetta against them, and they waited till a windy day to go start some fires and burn down some of the things that they don't have and that they don't have access to. And I'm afraid that's going to be the truth of what we find out with regards to those fires. And so we need to, we also have this fascination in America about talking about justice. But you know me, I talk about juries all the time. Juries have, to me, is also the greatest like embodiment of a decentralized system of law. And juries have a or what at once, in a world of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, had the power to also not just to apply justice but mercy. And the court honored, when they said, oh, somebody shot somebody, but somebody deserved it, and they said not guilty, that was final. And we've moved away from that. We've moved to a system of overlords where we've removed those humane feedbacks, and we've operated on this notion of, well, people move elsewhere and it'll be somebody else's problem. And the highly desirable places like San Francisco and Los Angeles are beginning to feel the kickback from this whole notion of it'll be somebody else's problem.
yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens here. A lot of them are going to leave and come to Arizona, Deezy. Sorry, blue state on the way from all these displaced Californians, man. All right, Lucas, this has been, I think we're going to wrap it up here. This has been a great conversation. Where can people find the FoMO show? Are you on X? You're on YouTube?
We are on X. We're on YouTube. We're going to be on Rumble soon. You can find us if you want to listen to some of our content. You can go to YouTube and look up the FoMO Show, FOMO, SHOW, or you can follow me on Twitter or X, and I am impossibly so. And my co-host is Grant, and he's at Grantosan, and Rusty Remus. So But I really enjoyed it. Fun time to be on the Goat Show. I enjoy kicking back with you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, before you go, I don't know if you have some. I forgot to remind you. I don't know if you have something to drink nearby or anything like that. Oh, there you go. Oh, right. There you go. Well, we toast the goats on this show. So, toast to you, Lucas.
Cheers.
Perfect timing. Finished off the Rain energy drink right at the last sip.
Rain energy drink.
Rain energy.
The Goat Show, now sponsored by
Rain energy. We got a slot
I
for
had
you.
coffee with hazelnut creamer. Delicious.
Hazelnut Creamer Company. Got a spot for you.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, the official sponsor of Santa Claus.
Coca-Cola, we got a spot for you. Hey, listen, insurance companies in LA not paying out. We'll take your money, man. Hey, look, guys, we got to make a buck here somehow. So I know y'all got the money. Why don't you hand it over to us and we'll Venmo our friends in LA a little bit of it.
Hand me the money, honey.
All right. Well, thank you, Lucas, for being on the show. I hope to be on the FoMO show soon. It looked like I listened to the episode. It was cool. If anybody listening out there, if you like the kind of conversations we just had, that's what they talk about in the FoMO show. If you want to learn a little bit more about crypto and also the we didn't even talk about Chia, but the Chia blockchain, you'll just have to go to the FoMO show to learn about Chia.
Yeah. Come learn about Chia. There's a lot afoot in the world of Chia. We didn't even get to any of that, but you heard it here first, folks.
Next time. All right, Fresh. What do the people got to do before we close it on out of here?
What you got to do is you got to like, you got to subscribe, you got to hit the bell, you got to drop a comment, and go fuck yourself.